Lily sat on the edge of the bed, clutching an old photo of her husband, Arthur. Dust had already settled on it, just like all the memories of him. She didn't know how to cope with this. Every day without him felt like torture. It was as if the world around her had turned gray, lacking vibrant colors. She couldn't cry, nor could she laugh. Everything had become empty. 10 years. They had lived together for 10 years in perfect harmony, with no room for disagreements or arguments. He was her fortress. With him she could overcome anything. And now he was gone, leaving her all alone in this vast world. How could this happen? Why? Lily couldn't understand how it occurred. There were no signs, no hints. One day he was just gone. The first few months after his death were a nightmare. Everything she did was just to avoid falling into despair. She took care of the house, visited friends, worked. But her heart ached. With each passing day, the pain grew sharper. He wasn't just a man to her. He was her purpose in life, her light. Years passed, and although Lily tried to move on, she could never shake the feeling of emptiness. She started noticing strange things. It seemed like Arthur was still somehow around, as if his soul hadn't left her. She would notice his favorite book on the shelf, the one he hadn't touched in years, or his old jacket hanging on the coat rack. Everything seemed so alive, and she, like a numb person, tried to breathe, tried to survive. But it wasn't easy. Time didn't heal wounds, it only fueled them with renewed intensity. One day, several years later, Lily found something that literally turned her world upside down. She opened a folder on his old desk. Something was pulling her there. Maybe it was a desperate attempt to find something that would bring Arthur back. But she didn't expect to find what she saw. Documents. Black and white papers filled with numbers, addresses, and strange names that Lily had never heard of. She knew that Arthur had been a successful man, but no one had ever mentioned his involvement in such grand-scale matters. He was in business, but she had no idea that his life was connected to the criminal world. Lily's heart sank, and she felt a cold sweat run down her spine. These were documents about illegal deals, criminal connections, and, as she understood, his involvement with dangerous people. She couldn't believe her eyes. How? Why did he hide this from her? Why had he never told her? The man she had thought of as perfect was now revealed to have a completely different side. Lily held in her hands the proof that her husband was involved in shady dealings. Yes, he had been kind and attentive. Yes, he had been the one to help her at every step. But now her world was falling apart because she realized that Arthur had hidden his true nature. She couldn't believe it, but the evidence was right there on the table. The tender love she had experienced now seemed like a lie. Arthur wasn't just her husband. He was someone else too, and that someone had kept dark secrets from her, secrets he took with him to the grave. Lily squeezed the documents in her hands and felt the ground slip from beneath her. All her beliefs were being shattered. She was left alone, with this burden that she would never be able to lift. And now what? Would she have to live with this knowledge, knowing that her beloved wasn't at all who she thought he was? Tears ran down her cheeks. These tears didn't bring relief. They only grew more bitter, heavier. She had only one thought. You were everything to me, and now I don't even know who you really were. Lily couldn't stop. She sat at the table, staring at the documents, unable to comprehend what to do with this knowledge. How could she go on living, knowing that her husband was involved in such horrors? Her heart ached. What now? Who could she tell? This wasn't just a crime. It was something much deeper and more dangerous. Lily felt the space around her closing in. The place she had once thought of as safe was now turning into a trap. She decided to do something she never would have considered before. Go to his old office. It was the last step she could take to find answers. But what was she hoping to find? Answers that could consume her entirely, or simply another lie that would deepen the pain? The office was on the outskirts of the city, in an old building that had long seemed abandoned. When Lily approached the entrance, her heart began to beat faster. She stood before the door, unsure of what would happen next. Inside, everything seemed so familiar, yet so foreign. Arthur was the kind of person who kept his life in strict order, but now this place felt empty, just like Lily herself. She entered and found herself in a corridor that had once been filled with the sounds of work and conversation. Now it was dead, lifeless. Lily passed by the offices where Arthur's colleagues had once sat. Behind the door she was headed toward was his personal office. She cautiously turned the handle and walked in. Everything was just as she remembered. His desk, his chair, shelves of books. No changes. It felt as if Arthur had just stepped out for a few minutes and would be back any moment. But Lily knew that he was gone. He would never return. She approached his desk and began searching, not knowing what exactly she was looking for. But then her gaze fell on an old filing cabinet, closed and dusty. Lily walked closer. She didn't know what exactly she was searching for, but she felt that something important might be there. It was as if there was something that would make her see Arthur in a way she had never seen him before. The cabinet contained folders with names, cases, phone numbers. But what caught her attention was a folder with a red ribbon. There were no labels on it. Lily opened it, and as soon as she looked at the contents, her hands began to shake. It was photographs. Terrifying photographs. Names she had never heard of. Faces that seemed familiar but which she had never met. And beneath each photo was a date. Dates that didn't match the ones she knew. These people were dead. Lily struggled to hold back tears as she looked at the pictures, realizing that her husband might not have been just a witness to these events, but their organizer. Her life was turning into a nightmare. But what else could she do? She was torn between love and truth, between keeping his image in her heart or destroying it, just as she was destroying herself. Then Lily noticed another folder. She couldn't help but open it. Inside were more photographs, but this time they were more personal. These were pictures of herself, from their trips together, from the home where they sat together on the couch. Pictures that Arthur had taken. But they were so unusual that Lily could hardly understand what they meant. She flipped the page, and at that moment her gaze fell on one word, written in blue marker. Control. What did this mean? Why were these photos here? Lily felt her heart race in her chest. Control. Her thoughts tangled, but she couldn't stop. She kept flipping through the folder, and the further she went, the more confused she became. These were photos he had taken when she didn't know. He had been watching her. He had been watching every step she took. Lily felt her world shatter. The man she had loved, the ideal she had admired, was not who she thought he was. He was someone else. He had hidden his true nature, as if preparing her for this horror. He was a manipulator. He was the one who had controlled her life. Anger and bitterness overwhelmed her. But none of that mattered, because Lily understood that now she needed only one thing, the truth. She had to know the whole truth, even if it killed her. But what she didn't know yet was that behind her the hunt had already begun. A hunt that would change her life forever. Lily sat in her chair holding the folder that had changed her life. With every minute spent with these documents, her thoughts became more tangled. But one thing was clear. She was on the edge of losing what was left of herself, the remnants of her world that once seemed simple and understandable. Now everything she knew had turned out to be a lie. Every word in the documents, every image, every date and signature felt like it was drowning her, pulling her into an abyss from which there was no escape. Lily understood that her husband, Arthur, was not the person she had thought he was. And if she had continued to live in ignorance, if she had continued to follow his ideals, she would have become an accomplice to something far more terrifying than mere deception. She closed the folder, but the burning sensation in her chest didn't subside. Lily stood up from the chair and moved toward the window. The outside world continued to exist, as though nothing had changed. Birds were singing, cars were driving by, and here she stood, lost in her own home, in her own past. It was then that her phone rang. She jumped. Not many people called her, especially since Arthur's death. She looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. Lily instantly realized that this wasn't a coincidence. Someone was near. Someone was watching her. "Hello?" Her voice sounded hoarse. Even she didn't expect such a reaction from herself. "Lily, don't try to hide. You know everything, don't you?" The voice on the other end was cold, sharp, and Lily instantly recognized it. It was the voice of someone she had seen among those dark photographs, the person whose name had appeared in the documents. "Who are you?" she tried to ask, struggling to hide her fear, but her inner tension was too obvious. "You don't understand what you've started. You searched for the truth, and now the truth will find you, Lily. You can't leave. You can't hide. We know what you've found. We know what you're going to do. And believe me, you don't want to go down that path." Her heart clenched. Who were these people? Why were they speaking as if they had power over her life? Could they destroy her just like they did with Arthur? And how long had they been watching her? "Are you threatening me?" she whispered, even though it was already clear. "No, Lily. We're not threatening you. We're just reminding you that you can't get out. You're already involved. And now, like Arthur, you're part of this world. You can try to leave, but you know what? We'll always find you." The phone went silent. Lily stood, unable to move. He hung up, and her life was once again engulfed in silence. But this silence was far more terrifying than any noise in the world. She felt her life slipping away, as if the very ground beneath her was vanishing, and she was trapped in the knowledge she had uncovered. It was too late. She couldn't go back. Her hands trembled, and she barely held back her tears. It all seemed so unreal. But the truth was undeniable. She could no longer be who she had been before. At that moment, when her world was crumbling, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Lily jumped up, her heart pounding in her chest. Who was it? She peeked through the peephole. A man stood in the doorway, the same man she had seen in her nightmares, the one from the photographs. He was tall, with a serious expression, and in his eyes was a dark determination. She didn't know what to do. She tried to remember what she should do in this situation, but something in her mind only made it more confusing. She knew she was in danger, but how could she get rid of it? How could she avoid what seemed inevitable? The man knocked on the door. Lily froze in place, unsure of what to do. Her heart kept racing. He knew she had found the documents. He knew she was standing on the edge of destruction. "Lily, open the door. We'll talk." His voice was calm, but there was strength in it that could overshadow everything around her. She took a step back, not knowing what to do. A thought flashed in her mind. If I open the door, I won't be able to leave. If I open the door, I'll lose myself forever. But what if this was her last chance to talk? What if she could learn more to understand how to escape from this? Lily slowly approached the door and opened it. The man stood before her. He didn't smile, but he wasn't threatening. He was just here, real, yet still foreign. "We know what you've found. We know you're asking questions." His voice was neutral, but something in it made her feel vulnerable. "And you know that this can't be changed anymore." Lily stood there, unsure of what to answer. All she wanted was to understand how to escape this hell, but it seemed there was no choice. "You don't understand," the man said, his gaze never leaving hers. "You're already in. You can't get out of the game." Lily closed her eyes, feeling something inside her break. "I don't want this. I don't want to be part of this." Her words sounded almost like a prayer, but the man only shook his head. "We all want to be someone else. but there's not always a choice. She understood. She was in the game, and the game would not end. Lily stood there, paralyzed, caught in the eyes of the man who seemed to know more about her life than she did herself. He knew she had found the documents. He knew she had been searching for answers, and now he was here to completely shatter her world. The man remained silent, giving Lily time to comprehend what was about to happen. It was a test, but for someone else. He seemed to be enjoying her state, her confusion. "You thought you could walk away?" he finally said, offering a small smile. "You were wrong, Lily. You're already tangled in this world, and now you'll have to play by our rules." Her heart pounded in her chest so violently it felt like it was going to burst out. Lily couldn't remember the last time she had felt so helpless. This man, this stranger, was part of the world that had destroyed her ideals, her faith in love and honesty. She tried to find some point of stability. She couldn't allow him to take control of her mind again, but the fear was too great to oppose him. He was here, and she was here, standing like a cornered cat. "Why are you watching me?" Her voice was barely audible, but she managed to squeeze out those words. It was the only way to learn even a small fragment of the truth. He merely shrugged silently. "We always watch those who interest us. And you've caught our attention, Lily. You have something we want, and you know what it is." Lily couldn't comprehend what he was talking about. What could she possibly have that would warrant surveillance? She wasn't part of this world. She wasn't involved in their dirty dealings. Or was she? "I don't understand," she whispered, already nearly losing all hope. "Why? Why does this all concern me?" The man took a step forward and looked at her intently. His gaze was as cold as ice. He seemed to be pondering whether to explain it all to her. "You've been part of all this from the very beginning." His words were quiet but incredibly powerful. "Arthur knew what he was getting into. He knew you would find out eventually, and he was preparing. He never left you alone with these secrets. He always controlled the situation. He wanted you to be safe, but he knew it wouldn't last forever." Lily felt the ground slip from beneath her. He knew that sooner or later she would uncover the truth. But he had told her nothing. He had kept his secrets, his life from her. And now she was entangled in this web, in this club she knew nothing about. "But what can I do?" Her voice was weak. "I can't go back to the past. I can't change what's already happened." The man stepped closer, looking her straight in the eyes. He wasn't cruel, wasn't violent, but there was something in his eyes that made her feel small, helpless. He was like a shadow of her past, and now that past was haunting her. "You can do one thing. Accept it, Lily. You're already in the game. You can't get out. Don't fool yourself. You can lose everything, or you can accept it and live by our rules." Lily felt a tightening pain in her chest. She couldn't believe this was happening to her. How could she be part of this world? She wasn't ready. She hadn't been prepared for this. And now she had to make a choice. "And what do you want from me?" she asked, almost choking on the words. "Why me?" "Because you're Arthur's wife. You're his heir. You've become part of this world by right, and now your life is bound to it. We want your help." Lily felt her head spin. Everything was unbearable. She had thought she could survive the pain, that she could find a way to escape. But now it was clear that she had been drawn into a game she couldn't refuse. She stood there, head bowed, not knowing what to do. But this man wasn't her enemy. He was part of the system, and perhaps she would have to become part of it too. She wasn't ready for this, but now she couldn't go back. "I don't want this." Her voice sounded almost like a prayer. "I don't want to be part of all of this." The man merely shrugged. "You didn't choose, Lily. This isn't your choice. But if you want to survive, if you want to keep your life, you need to understand one thing. You can't be on Arthur's side. You have to pick a side. and the choice won't be easy. Lily felt her soul tear apart. Everything she knew and loved was now in danger. She stood at the edge, on the brink, and didn't even know how to take the right step. But one thing was clear. She couldn't leave. She couldn't just run from this. Lily didn't know how it would all end, but she knew her life would never be the same again. Lily sat in the dark silence, consumed by her thoughts. The man had left, leaving her with a decision that could change everything. She didn't know how her life had once again become a labyrinth with no way out. Everything she had once considered her world was now turned upside down. This world, hidden behind the facade of an ideal, turned out to be dirty and cruel. And now she was a part of it, no matter what role she played. What was she supposed to do? Leave? Try to fight this on her own terms, or immerse herself in this world and accept its rules? She felt the weight of this decision gnawing at her from within. She could no longer trust herself. Even her feelings for Arthur were starting to mutate. He had always been her symbol of love and security, but now he was the source of pain and deception. He had known how to protect her, but he had left her in a world she couldn't understand. All she knew was that she had to be strong now. Lily closed her eyes, and the words of that man echoed in her mind again. You have to pick a side. As if fate was leaving her no choice. She exhaled, breathing in the air as though it held all her strength. Lily understood that if she didn't participate, if she didn't learn to control the situation, she would be destroyed. She felt the fear, the weakness, the love for Arthur slowly consuming her. And then, there would be nothing left but complete annihilation. The day turned to night, and her thoughts continued to spiral in circles. Time had started to lose its meaning, and finally, she made her decision. The next day, standing by the door, Lily could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She had chosen. It was a decision that didn't allow her peace, but she understood now that she couldn't remain neutral. Either she accepted this world, or the world would consume her. When she arrived at the office, the man was already there. He looked at her, and his eyes showed neither joy nor disappointment, just emptiness, as if his face was a mask. You came. His voice was low, like an echo of something expected. Lily nodded, trying not to betray her inner turmoil. She felt her chest tighten, but she didn't stop. I'm ready, she said, knowing these were the most important words of her life. He just looked at her, not responding immediately. Do you understand that this is not just a choice, Lily? You will become part of something bigger. You will become one of us. You can no longer be who you were. You've chosen. Her inner voice told her that this was wrong, that there was still time to turn back. But her mind, cornered and trapped, wouldn't let her retreat. She had taken a step into this world, and now there was no turning back. I understand, Lily said, gathering all her strength to keep from shaking. What do I need to do? The man quietly sighed and handed her a document. She took it, feeling her fingers grow cold. You'll sign, and you'll become part of this world. Now, you'll play by our rules. Lily slowly unfolded the document. It was a contract, and with each clause she read, her heart raced faster. A burning and painful feeling spread in her chest. In that moment she realized there was no way back. All that was left for her was to accept the rules and live with them. She signed. Now that Lily had signed the document, she felt her life shift sharply. Everything that had come before was meaningless. She was no longer the woman sitting in her home, tormented by her search for the truth. Now she was part of this dark network, part of a game where there were no rules. Or rather, there were rules, but they weren't meant for the weak. The man standing next to her folded the documents and calmly tucked them into his pocket. Now you're under our protection. We'll do everything to make sure you're comfortable. But remember one thing. You can't back out now. You'll work with us, or you'll lose everything. Arthur knew what he was getting into. And now, you're with us. Lily couldn't speak. This was what she had feared. For a moment, she had thought she could find a way out. But now she knew her life would never be the same. All that was left for her was to follow. Now Lily was part of their world, a world with its own laws, its own rules, and now she was an integral part of it. She didn't know what awaited her next. But one thing was clear. This would be a journey filled with pain, doubt, and decisions she could no longer control. Lily sat in the dark room, staring into the void. She couldn't believe how quickly everything had changed. Just yesterday, she was an ordinary woman, mourning the loss of her husband, and now she was part of something far darker and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Her life, which had seemed stable, had collapsed in an instant. And now there was no turning back because she had already become part of their game. It had been several days since she signed the contract. The man she met in the office continued to be by her side. He spoke to her coldly and dryly, as if every step she took had already been predicted, as if her actions were all mapped out. She didn't know which was worse, being in the dark or understanding that her life had become a game where the stakes were much higher than she ever thought possible. Her role? Lily still didn't fully understand it, but one thing was clear. She had to be the link between the various groups that had once been nothing more than names on a page. People involved in the criminal world, people she had never known before, were now her acquaintances. And her place in this world wasn't by chance. She was expected to help them, follow orders, and remain silent. This was her new reality. With each passing day, Lily felt her soul fading away. Her own moral principles, which had once seemed untouchable, were now becoming empty words. Everything she had once believed in now felt like an illusion. She sat at the table, holding new documents in her hands. These papers were far more dangerous than the ones she had found in Arthur's office. They were contracts, signatures, the names of people she didn't even know, and she was a part of them. The words silence had become her daily reality. Lily couldn't allow herself to give up. She was in this world now, and the only thing left for her was to play by its rules. After a while, she was called. The man who had now become her mentor appeared again at her door. He was dressed in the same formal suit, with the same cold look that had once made her feel small and powerless. "Are you ready, Lily?" he asked, showing no emotion. "Yes," she answered, although deep down she wanted to say, "No, I'm not ready." But she couldn't. She had no choice. He handed her a phone. "Contact him. He'll be waiting for your call." Lily took the phone, her hand trembling slightly. She didn't know who she was about to speak to, but she knew that in this world there was no place for weakness. Every step, every word could cost her everything. She dialed the number and waited. The voice on the other end was hoarse and harsh. "Is this Lily?" the man asked. "Yes, it's me," she replied, feeling her heart begin to race again. "You'll be working with us, Lily. You'll do it, and you will stay silent. You will help us. We're giving you a chance, and if you don't take it, forget everything." Her breath quickened. This was the moment when Lily realized that her life no longer belonged to her. She was part of something larger than she could have ever imagined, and this larger thing controlled everything. "I understand," she said, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Then we don't have time to waste. We're all in the same boat, Lily, but this boat isn't drifting. We're moving forward, and you need to move with us." He hung up, and Lily was left in silence, feeling the world around her crumble further. Now, she had to act. She couldn't afford to make mistakes. In this game, a mistake could cost her life. She had taken the first step, and now the path back was closed. Time passed, and with each day, Lily felt herself sinking deeper into this world. A world where she was no longer a woman mourning the loss of her husband. Now she was part of a dark network, part of a system that left no room for weakness. She continued working with the people connected to her new life, and all she felt was emptiness. Everything she once considered important had now become nothing. She was merely a tool. But one day, her life changed again. Lily met one of the people she had heard so much about. He was one of the most influential figures in the organization. He was silent, reserved, and stern. But when they sat at the table and began discussing business, something in his eyes made her feel like she was one step closer to the truth. "Do you understand how everything works?" he asked, looking at her. Lily remained silent. "You don't belong here," he continued. "You don't want to be part of this world, Lily. You want to be who you were. And I see that." She felt her heart race faster. Those words, they were like a light in a dark tunnel. "So, what now?" she asked, momentarily forgetting the rules. He looked at her, and there was something strange, almost compassionate in his gaze. "You've made your choice, Lily. But what if there's another way? You can still leave." Lily sat in the shadow, thinking about the words of this man. He was right. She could leave. But then her life would be destroyed, and all that was left for her was to make a choice. Lily sat in the shadows, her mind consumed by chaos. The words of that man echoed in her head, repeating over and over. You can still leave. But what did that mean? Leave? Into a world where there was no turning back? Where every step could be her last? Lily understood that in this game there was no exit. Every action of hers had been meticulously planned, and her decision was just part of a scheme she couldn't even comprehend. She looked at his face. He was the kind of person who knew how to play with people, how to manipulate them. He was just as dangerous as the others, but there was something different in his eyes. Understanding. He knew that in her soul doubts lingered, that in her heart there was still a flicker of desire to be free. But he also knew that none of this mattered. "You can't just leave, Lily," he said, his voice almost quiet, but with a force that made her want to flee. "You thought you could exit this game, but the truth is, you're already in it, and it will never let you go." Lily felt her heart tighten. She didn't know how to respond. He was right. She had tried to find an escape, but every time she thought she was on the brink of freedom, she was once again consumed by this web she had gotten caught in. "But if I stay, what happens next?" Her voice was filled with fear, but also with determination. "I need to understand what I should expect." He was silent for a moment, as though contemplating her words. Then his gaze became even more piercing, as if he were looking straight into her soul. "You want to be free, but freedom here is an illusion, Lily. We all play by the same set of rules, and if you want to survive, you need to understand one thing. You won't be who you were, and you won't get your husband back. Everything you had was just part of the game." These words struck her deeply. Suddenly, she understood that maybe Arthur was never who she had thought he was. She had always believed that his death was a tragedy, but now she was beginning to realize that her world had been shattered, not just by Arthur's death, but by everything he had hidden from her. He had been a part of this dark network, a part of the world that had consumed her, and now she was in it too, just like he had been. "So what should I do?" Lily whispered, no longer sure of what she wanted. "How do I live with this?" His gaze was cold and precise. He could see her inner turmoil, see how she was being torn apart. But he was not here to comfort her. "You can't go back, Lily. You've made your choice. But you still have power in your hands. You can accept your new role and become part of this world, or you can try to escape. And if you run, believe me, no one will let you go." The words spoken by this man became a kind of final warning. She understood that in this game there would be no winners, only those who survive and those who perish. And Lily could no longer be just an observer. She had become part of this story. Thinking for a moment, she lifted her gaze and looked him in the eyes. "I can't live in fear anymore," she said firmly. "I can't let myself be a pawn in someone else's hands." He raised an eyebrow slightly, then nodded, as if all of this had been part of the plan, and he knew she would make this choice. "Are you ready, Lily? Ready to pay the price of freedom?" Her heart raced, but she nodded. "Yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to fight." He smiled with satisfaction. "Then let's begin." Lily took a step into the new world. She knew that her decision would not be without consequences, but now she was ready. The dark corners of this network had become her new reality, and she was no longer going to sit in the shadows. She had made her choice, and now she had to learn how to live in this world without becoming its victim. With each passing day, Lily grew stronger, no longer fearing her new life. She had learned how to manipulate, how to play their game. But deep within her soul, there still lingered a small spark of doubt. What if she had chosen the wrong path? What if she had lost her soul forever? But in that moment, Lily understood. Sometimes, to survive, you must become what you never wanted to be. And her freedom had cost her the journey through this darkness. Thank you for listening to this story until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss new spine-chilling stories. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and share this video with your friends. More eerie and incredible stories are coming soon. The next story is just around the corner. Are you ready to discover what lurks in the darkness?